Today we're talking surplus. What is the market like in 2024? What kind of gun owner are you?
Okay. What kind of American are you?
Are you a collector? Or do you just buy for modern defensive purposes? I would submit that the market is beginning to self-correct. Right now we are starting to see a number of firearms come down in pricing. What does that mean for you, the consumer? Are there really good deals to be had in 2024? A little background information on the current state of affairs. Starting in about 2015, things stopped being fun for those of us who enjoyed collecting. Prices went through the roof, and before we knew it, the availability of everything we enjoyed was mostly over. That was due to a number of factors. Unfortunately, in 2014, Russia decided to invade Ukraine, so suddenly exports from Europe, well, they began to slow down a bit, as you could surmise. Around the same time frame, we were pretty convinced that the election was going to go a very specific direction, which would have resulted in massive losses to our civil rights. The amount of purchasing that occurred around this time frame resulted in everybody buying anything that could fire a projectile. Once the Glocks and ARs were gone, suddenly these became appealing. Rifles that were previously $80 to $300, fun range toys, fun collectibles, well, now they became viable self-defense tools again. Of course, when everybody started buying up the 7.5 French, you knew things were bad. The same thing began to happen around 2020, and for those of us who were in the collector market, let's talk about how things were before the happenings happened. You used to be able to walk into a gun shop. There'd be a rack of antique firearms. That, of course, is the thing of the past. Unfortunately, many gun shops, small and large, found that the best audience for antique firearms was going to be online. They had a much larger pool of collectors that they could now reach out to all across the country, and items were no longer being forced to sit on their shelves for 6 or 7 months, which was a lot more normal. And with the purchasing of antique firearms cooling off, this is likely where you will find the type of things that you want to add to your collection, should you decide to go down this path. Currently, there are a number of deals to be had. I'm starting to notice that SMLEs are falling in price. However, a lot of large distributors are likely overpaying for surplus from places like Africa, with a lot of Eastern Europe withholding their shipments as of late. Of course, we're seeing a lot of stuff come out of Israel, but that's not really helping things because the price of those pistols is often more than what the price would be for a new commercial IWI copy of, let's say, a Jericho, for example, or a Turkish high power. Of course, the pistol market is also changing with more and more police trade-ins coming back to the market in 2024. We're seeing a pretty large selection of police trade-ins come back to the market, and things are returning more to normal for police trade-ins. Prices typically vary between $200 something all the way up to about $500. You can pick up a P320 for under $300 in some cases if you hunt around. There's a reason for that, though. Of course, a lot of agencies have opted to move back to Glock. Speaking of Glock, even Gen 4s and Gen 5 Glocks can be had for the mid $300 to $400 range that also come from a number of different agencies around the country. So definitely something to keep your eye on if you're looking to get a good value, a good bang for your buck. There are still plenty of police trade-ins, and more are hitting the market every day. We're not having to pay the $700, $800 plus that they were demanding at the height of the panic. It was crazy to watch $300 handguns climb to $700. There was no reason for it, and we should not play that game if we want the market to correct, which it now is. If you're interested in foreign surplus, I've noticed a lot of P38s that are starting to hit the market again that were produced during the Cold War that saw service with the German police and Bundeswehr. So while things are beginning to return a little more to normal, I would submit that it's probably not a good time to begin buying a lot of what is out there as of right now. Most military long arms are grossly overpriced, though I would say that some could be considered an investment or at least hold their value. The ones that I think will most likely hold their value would be Mausers, 1903 Springfields, and when Grands, things that have an association with the Second World War from the major powers. As I mentioned earlier, the Lee Enfield SMLEs have stabilized and are holding at about the $350 to $400 price point. Additionally, if you're really determined to get into the collector market, the Italian-produced Carcano rifles are still hovering around the $250 price point, and if you hunt around a bit, you can also find Arisakas for around $300 to $400. Also a good option. You have to understand with the changing market that there are less and less people who have the resources available to buy this stuff, and the interest in this stuff is much smaller than it appeared on the surface. So of course prices will go backwards on some things. If you're a big boy collector, if you have a lot of money to spend, buying NFA items is certainly a good investment for the long term, because we're not making more of those as of right now, and it's pretty unlikely that we're going to see a full repeal of the NFA, unfortunately, anytime soon. The other stuff to look into that might be a good investment for those of you with a lot of money to spend, if you want to at least have something that will hold its value, maybe go up in value, you might want to begin looking at even older firearms, muskets of the American Civil War vintage and the American Revolution. Those are still going for a pretty penny and are often found in auction houses. Obviously, period artillery, vintage artillery of that era as well, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, that will also likely keep going up in value with time. It wasn't even that long ago that you could even get into some World War II era artillery pieces that weren't prohibitively expensive even for the general consumer. I know that sounds crazy, but that's true. The same could be said for a lot of Civil War artillery pieces if you roll back the clock 30 to 50 years. That's when a lot of guys got into these collections. They started buying this stuff when it was cheap, just like I bought this stuff when it was cheap. Again, though, the market of collectors is going to continue to shrink with people having had less children and a lot of young people not having expendable money. You're going to see a small pool of people who are willing to spend top dollar for this. So don't expect to be able to get out of whatever you buy in quick order should you need the cash. That all being said, collecting is not dead in 2024. It's still very much an alive hobby. It's just a lot more cost prohibitive for most people than it was previously. Something else I've noticed a lot of young guys right now are doing, they're buying sporterized rifles and converting them back to their military configuration. This is not something I would advise doing unless you are doing it as a passion project or a labor of love, because you will never get your money back out of that rifle going part by part, piece by piece, because more often than not, the parts kits or some of the components on these rifles, it's cheaper to buy the full thing, the complete thing as is. Really, the big takeaway here is I want you to get out there and actually enjoy these firearms. Take that antique rifle to the range. Get some good quality ammunition for it. I know it's hard to source surplus ammunition at this point because it mostly dried up in the 2016 era. And with so many countries withholding exports, it has certainly put an end to an era where things were once considered surplus and then shifted into collector pieces. I would also caution you, as I've said in this video, you cannot look at the majority of what is available as a collector piece. You have to treat it as surplus. This is going to be a passion project for you overall, more than a way to hedge inflation, though it certainly could be in some cases. You just have to do your research, do your due diligence, and ensure that you are making good buys at the time based on the market trends. The firearms world is very fickle when it comes to certain trends, and things come and go. A few years ago, you could go in a local gun shop, again, spend 80 to 100 bucks, and another $30 on ammo, and you'd have a great day at the range. Feel free to share your thoughts and comments below. I do appreciate it. Thank you for all the years of support.